Good evening. It's December 20th, and this is the regularly scheduled meeting of the Wareham School Committee. And the meeting is being recorded by WCTV for broadcast, and Mrs. Ruiz is making an audio-only recording. And the first order of business is public comment. If anyone would like to come down and comment, please come down, state your name.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Mike Flaherty. I noticed we have the FY19 budget on the agenda for tonight, but I didn't see a line item, a copy of the line item budget available at the table. Will it be available?
Yes.
Right. Does the school committee have? I hope you guys know what you're voting on.
Hi there.
Hi.
I'm Michelle Francois. I am a taxpayer here in town, a parent, and lucky enough to be an educator at the Wareham schools. I wanted to speak to the document that Mike was just referring to that we received a couple of weeks ago, the proposed budget as it was set for FY19. I first wanted to thank every administrative team, Dr. Shaver-Hood, Mike McMillan, for all of their hard work in compiling this document. I know it's not an easy task, and there's a lot that goes into it. And it is somewhat easier to read for the average person in this document form. I've had a couple of weeks to go over this since attending the budget proposal meeting, and I looked over some of the line items within the document, hoping they're close to being correct. As I looked at the numbers requested from the different schools, one word kept creeping into my thoughts, and that was equity amongst the schools. I'm deeply troubled by what seems to be an inequity of funds that are being asked for at the different levels. I'm specifically referring to how the numbers of students who are enrolled versus what must be staffing numbers for salaries is being allocated, or could possibly be allocated even as soon as tonight if we vote on this budget the way it sits. I would estimate that the high school, and again these are rough numbers, I'm not 100% on them, has about 460 children, whereas the middle school has about 730. Deacon's is just under that with 575-ish, mine at approximately 490 or so. So I would question why there's a request in the high school budgeting for teachers and sped teachers, I included both when I kind of did some calculations, of almost $700,000 more in those two spots than the Deacon's school, which if the enrollment numbers are valid or close to valid, would be about 100 less students at the high school level. Not even mentioning the enrollment that currently is at the middle school versus that of the high school as well, and their funding that was requested was also lower than the high school level. As we all know, Deacon's has some of the youngest, neediest learners who desire to get, and we hope to impart, a solid foundation to move forward and become one of the high school students in the IB program even. I feel like we should at least be striving for equitability between class sizes within the schools, if not an equitable number of staff to student ratios within the schools. Along that same line, for equitability, I looked at the paraprofessional salaries that had been requested. I again see some inequities. It appears as though, according to this, that the requested amount going to the high school would be about $50,000 more than what's been requested at Deacon's. And the school that holds the most students right now is requesting $30,000 less, than the high school is requesting. The other day, Mike McMillan, when he presented this, said, money is positions. So in my mind, when I'm reading this, money is positions. So if the money equates to staffing, this doesn't feel equitable. As a mother and a teacher, I would expect that a high school student would be far more self-sufficient than a 4-, 5-, or 6-year-old that sits in my class. And again, I teach the baseline foundations for all of the learning and achievement that is to come as a kindergarten teacher. If we don't have teachers, if we don't have paraprofessionals to form those small instruction groups, we will not make the progress that we're looking for. The last thing on my radar with regards to equality is a line item in here, and I'm not sure, how it pertains, if it will go through, etc., of a $90,000 library salary for the high school. I'm very disheartened by the fact that the elementary schools no longer have a library. I personally lose and give away hundreds of dollars of books every year so that I can impart a love of reading to the children that I have. I'm curious as to where that money, how it is going. Is it going for books? Again, I wasn't in on all the talks, so I'm not privy to that, but I'm just curious. And I also feel like Wareham has an abundance of technology that we use daily. And at a high school level, I feel like perhaps those students would be using technology more than a library book to research. In closing, my hope would be that moving forward with any of the tough budget decisions that I know are coming down the pike, that this school department, the board here in front of me, Mr. McMillan and Dr. Shaver-Hood, would refrain from cutting anything from a middle school or an elementary school budget and look solely where the enrollment is least and the budget requests are the highest. I hope that you will hear my voice. I hope others hear my voice. And I hope that we can find equity that is needed for all the students for a staff to student ratio. Thank you.
Our next order of business is...
Madam Chair.
Oh, yes, go right ahead.
I know public comment is not the time when school committee members are expected to have a dialogue with the people making the comments. But I just wanted to thank Mr. Flaherty and Mrs. LaFrancois for being here, speaking your minds, letting us know what you think. There's not enough of that in my mind. There weren't enough people at the public hearing who had thoughts like that. So although I will have things to say when it comes time to vote on the budget, I just wanted to thank both of you for being here and talking to us.
Next order of business, good news.
How do we sign in? Good evening, school committee. Good evening, audience. My name is Bethany Chandler. I'm the interim principal at Deacon School, and I'm very, very proud tonight to show off Deacon School and all of our literacy work that we've done thus far. And I've entitled this Deacon School Lights on Literacy. So we'll quickly go through grade K, 1 and 2. We have a live presentation as well as some video presentation to show about what we're doing in the realm of literacy at Deacon School. So I'm going to turn the microphone over to our grade K to begin.
Hello, I'm Jennifer Medeiros. I teach at Deacus Elementary. I teach K. So while they grab all the kiddos to come down and present for you, I'll just explain a little bit of how we're going to start off. Darlene will be showing you, and the children will be showing you what we do on a daily basis. We call it the Blue Book, and it basically is all about phonemic awareness. It's called PA All the Way, and it starts at your basic phonemic awareness skills, and increasingly will get more difficult each day.
So we do this daily. I hope you can hear me.
But others can't. Is there any way we can get a microphone?
Yep, sure. We've got that. Talk nice and loud, okay? Ready? Okay. All right. So we do this daily, and every day we do it for about 10, 15 minutes a day. It's pretty fast-paced. We are on week 12 right now, and I think my book has like 38 weeks in it, so it goes on, and it gets difficult as we go, and every week there's more and more levels of difficulty. So first I have Cullen DeGowan. We have Tegan Kauzik, can never say her name right, Aver Mbaki, and I didn't know your name, honey. Olivia. What's your last name, Olivia? Pearl. Okay. So I'm going to start with what we do, and we're just going to do about 2 or 3 of these. Here we go. You ready? All righty. Okay, boys and girls. I want you to think of parts of your head. Okay? So anything that I say, see if you can tell me the word that goes with the parts of your head. You ready? Okay. Here we go. Dips. Dips. Lips. Okay. Ties.
Eyes.
Good job. Bows.
Nose.
We're thinking about our head now, okay? Hair. Good job. Mouth. Mouth. Fleeks.
Cheeks.
Good job. Eyebrows.
Eyebrows.
Ears.
Ears.
Teeth.
Teeth.
Min.
Chin.
Good job. I'm going to say a word now, and I want you to tell me. I'm going to say an onset and a rhyme of a word. So the beginning and the end of the word, you tell me what the word is. You ready? Hill. Ick.
Sick.
Dim. Zip. Ick.
Pick.
Dot.
Dot.
Good job.
Moth.
Ox.
Fox.
Rot.
Rot.
Lock.
Lock.
Good job. Now I want you to break the word apart and tell me the onset of the word and the rhyme of the word. You ready? Here we go. Tell me the 2 parts of tag.
Ag.
Good job. Jack.
Ag.
Wag.
Ag.
Good job. Had.
Ag.
Nap.
Ag.
Rip.
Rip.
Good job. Did. Win. Sit. Pig.
Pig.
All right. Good job. Now, if I had the word dim and I changed the d to what would it be?
Him.
How about him? Change the h to j.
Jim.
Jim. Change the j to k.
Kim.
Kim. Change the k to r.
Rim.
Rim. Change the r to d.
Dim.
Do one more, okay, guys? Here we go. I'm going to say uck. I want you to put the b in front.
Buck.
Uck. Put the d in front.
Duck.
Put the l in front.
Look.
Put the p in front.
Puck.
Put the t in front.
Tuck.
Good job. Nice job.
Ready for some vowel bat? Let's do some vowel bat.
Okay. You're gonna stand for the stand up, girls. Okay. Ready?
Hold on.
Sing loud.
You can look right up there.
Yep, it's right up there, just like you always see it.
Yep.
Over there. You can get off the stage.
You don't have to stand on the stage, you can sit down.
I'll do it with you. Here we go.
We're not getting any sound here? That's not it.
Sorry, it's okay. You might have to do it a cappella.
Sight word. Let's go back. That was the link that we had. If you just put in vowel bat, it will
Okay.
come up.
Just do vowel back.
Yep, there it is. Sorry about that. The one
Second
at the
one.
bottom.
This one?
That one?
Yep.
There it is. All right. Yay.
Ready.
We have sound.
Show the grade 1. Mr. Sweat?
Yes, I would like to know, how many of you could do that in August? Because it's December now, right? And you started to go to school in September, right? And it's now December. Could you do that in August before you started school?
Do you know your vowels?
But you could pick out those. Your teachers are not sure that that's true. What do you think? Would you like the microphone? Thank you for being here tonight.
Great job.
Yes, thank you.
All right. Okay. Okay, so we have a couple pictures up here. The first one is a picture. These are both from Mrs. LaFrancois' classroom. The first one is a picture of the students during Love a Book time. During this time, the students each have their own bag. These are books that they've previously read before. Students choose books for the bag, and teachers put books in the bag. It gives students a time to become familiar with books. They get to practice the words that they're familiar with, helps them with sight words. During this time, they read to self, and they also read with a partner. And then the second photo that you see up there is the flash phonics time. During this time, it's like a slideshow presentation. And with this one, there would be word families, words that might end in "and." Students become familiar with the ending sounds of words. They can see how words go together. They practice their automaticity because they're seeing these words coming up on the screen very rapidly, like they were working with Mrs. McQuaid. It's very quick, so they do become familiar. They are quicker with it, and it does help them with their decoding skills. The next slide we have. Sure it doesn't go fast. Oh, there we go. This is a video from one of our first grade teams, Mrs. Wolfe and Mrs. Davis, and they videotaped some activities, so what their literacy time looks like in first grade.
I will laugh you if you tell that joke. Liam? I will laugh if you tell that joke. You will be cold if you forget to wear your coat. Trent? You will be cold. All right, one more. We put the groceries in a sag. Marina? In a bag. Nice job. Okay, you're helping your partner track. A little bit closer to his face. Go closer to their face. Slow down, Sophia. Move your eyes, Trent. So go a little bit this way. Maybe that way. Liam, pay attention to me.
Oh, I keep hitting the wrong button. So that was just a glimpse into our first grade. And if I can get this to come back up again.
And finally, we have 2 grade students to present what they're working on in grade 2 in literacy with a Google presentation. Austin, Caden, come on up.
Bethany, do you know why this isn't coming back up? Oh, I know. Here we go. No, that's not it either. Just go back. I did. It's not going. Let me close this out. Is it over here? No. Should be right there.
Yeah, I don't know. All right, you ready to introduce yourselves? We put the slide up.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to get back to, is that slide. Sorry, we seem to have lost the screen here. And I'm not familiar with this. Is it on the bottom here? Rose? Is it in your inbox?
Yeah, I don't go to your mail. Yeah, no. Just put that off, no, and I'll reopen it. Can you close that out? Close the,
I'm sorry, I don't know what you want me to
close the, there you go. Just so I can open up my own email. Good. Let me move over right now. Quickly get back into the slideshow. Sorry about that. Do we have internet connection?
No, I don't know. It was there.
You probably have 2 second graders who could help.
Yeah, I know. Right? It seems to be here, it just doesn't seem to be here.
a black screen though.
That's all right. I'll reopen it. I don't want to take anybody's time up. It's, all right, I have it coming back up. Sorry, boys. Are you ready now? Yep. All right.
There we go.
All right, boys, introduce yourselves. Oops, sorry.
Okay. So we have Aiden and Caden from Mr. Roach's classroom. They have been doing some fantastic things with Google Classroom, and they're going to tell you a little bit about that. Okay. Austin, right here. And then I'll click forward for you, okay?
Ugh.
Okay, Austin, you ready?
Hello, my name is Austin.
Tell them about your grammar slide.
I will be talking about grammar today.
Now, how do you use Google Classroom to practice your grammar? You're doing a great job. Look at the slide. Go ahead. Just look at the slide.
In this one, I'm circling the verbs and sentences.
And Mr. Roach shares this with you on the computer, right? Yeah. So when Mr. Roach sends this to you, you do it, and then you send it back to him, right? And what does Mr. Roach do when he sends it back to you?
He doesn't send it back. He keeps it once I submit it, unless it did something wrong.
Okay. So he lets you know. So Mr. Roach can give them feedback via their Google Classroom. All right, let's try the next slide. Good job, Austin. All right. Caden, you ready to talk about yours? Okay. Just pull it. There you go.
Hi, my name is Caden, and today I'll be showing question of the day on Google Classroom. Question of the day, Mr. Roach usually gives us a question, and we have to say what we like the most about the question, or usually what happens. And if you vote on one, then it would show you all the other people what they picked.
Okay. All right, you ready? All right. And Austin, you talk about writing?
So this is where Mr. Roach gives us like something to write about. First we write in our Reader's Writer's notebook, and then we read it into the computer.
Okay, good job.
Mrs. Gibbs, can you pull the microphone a little closer?
Sure. And this is a sample of one of Austin's writing assignments.
The only one he ever gave me.
Good. And Caden?
And Mr. Roach, he usually tells us about a story. First, we have to say what we think it's going to be about. The book that we were doing was Lila and the Secret of Rain, and you have to predict what's going to happen first. And then after you think what's going to happen, Mr. Roach reads the story, then you see what it actually was about. And you answer questions on the bottom, so Mr. Roach knows what you said.
All right. Good job. And we weren't sure, there was another student that might be participating, so we had put in a slide about the social studies, and Mr. Roach will sometimes open up a Google Classroom. Did one of you want to talk about the Lloyd Center? Okay.
For the Lloyd Center, we went there for a field trip, and Mr. Roach wanted to know what we liked most about it. So he gave us a few questions about the Lloyd Center, and we had to say what one we liked the best for each one. And at the end, it said to write about your favorite thing about it. And after you did that, all you had to do was submit it.
Nice job, boys. All right. Thank you very much, boys. You did a fantastic job. And that completes our literacy slideshow.
Questions for the school committee? Mr. Sweat?
So how does what you showed us this evening compare to what you were doing a year ago?
I think
Teachers?
that would best come from one of our teachers.
You want to speak to that, Ms. Medeiros? Okay.
So I would say about a year ago, we had certain protocol as far as, we were doing Wilson, we have curriculum. What we do now is much more rigorous. I would say that's the huge difference. There's a lot more rigor involved. There's a lot more incorporated within that time frame of literacy. In addition, there's a lot more of the physical aspect added in, the crossing midline, the focus on, for these young kids, to focus on their body, because they need to understand how their body works and develop those skills in order to become good readers. So I think my number one answer would be rigor. And there's not one wasted moment in our day. We actually will wear lanyards with letters. We'll wear, so whenever they're in line, here we go, what's the word, what's the letter, We're really, really trying to put as much as we can in there, just for the fact of them seeing it in exposure. We've had a lot of great curriculum come through Wareham, and it all pretty much has the same skills, but just putting this much into their day, and it doesn't matter which curriculum you use, just the format that we use and how much we put in there. That's been the big difference for as far as what I can see.
And with all this additional rigor, is there any issue of the children keeping up, or are they going right with you?
At first, it was tough, but they're keeping up at this point. I believe we have really risen, if that's a word, our expectations. I think that's what it is. We are expecting more, and they are rising to the occasion, and they are doing it. What I didn't think the 4- and 5-year-olds were capable of doing, after a couple of weeks, they really get into just the routine of everything, and they are surprisingly doing a great job with it. And it's constantly changing every 10, 15 minutes, so it's not us just sitting there for 45 minutes. It is us up, we're down, we're looking here, we're turning, so it's a constant movement for them.
You've made my day. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Sure, go ahead, Mary.
So I just want to start out by saying that I truly believe that putting in the physical part is very important. I mean, think about brain gym and all that, just helping overall in children being able to focus and to learn. So one of my questions is, though, I'm very familiar with the Foundations program and all the research behind it, the evidence-based research behind it. So I was trying to find the research that was behind this program that I know was created by, it slips the mind, Carrie. So is there a place, I went to her site already, can't really find solid research.
Hi. So basically, I wouldn't call it a program. What Carrie has done is she's looked at all the different practices and strategies. These aren't necessarily new things that we're doing. It's just taking all of those practices and putting them together and creating what I guess I would call as a scope and sequence, which makes sense for our students. It takes it, it puts them together, it has it so that students are practicing the different areas of literacy that they need during a day. And we're not just focusing on a letter this week, we're looking at multiple letters. We're introducing things sooner because they're able to take that information, they're able to learn that information. So like I said, it's not new. And is there research? I suppose if you look at the strategies themselves that are being used, there's research behind all of those strategies. I mean, they are proven, they work, but it's just taking it and putting it together. It's not a program.
Okay, and then one other question that I have, my last question is, what do you do with the children that do not respond well to it?
So we've been looking at the data. We're looking at what students are struggling. The teachers have been working, again, with Carrie. We've looked at which students are having a difficult time. So something that we are doing a little differently this year, especially with Kay, this is huge. We're grouping students between 4 classrooms. And we're taking the students that are struggling, we're grouping them into smaller groups, we're putting them in a room with 2 or 3 adults, depending on what personnel we have available, so that they can focus on those skills. So at one given time during the day, these 4 classrooms look at all of their students and divide them up based on what they need.
Okay, so you're not using any sort of different program then, you're just sort of giving a double dose?
They do have some different interventions that they're using for students who need additional support, who need to maybe take it back a step, you know, look at a more foundational skill.
Right. And then, I know I said that was my last question, but you just made me think of another one. So do you think you have enough support, staff and teachers, to implement this effectively and appropriately?
We could always use more.
There you go.
We could
Thank
use
you.
more.
Yeah.
We're doing, we're doing what we can. We're
I'm sure you
doing
will.
a great job. We have, but we could always use another set of hands, especially in K.
And our
Thank you.
kindergarten teachers have been great about reaching out to get volunteers to come in as well. They've worked hard on that. But people are busy, they have jobs, so we can't always depend on that, but they're doing a good job. We do have a lot of kindergartners this year, so, I mean, if we have extra hands, we try and put them into K as much as we can.
I have no doubt that you utilize the staff that you have well. The question is...
Can we? Yes,
Okay.
always.
Right.
Other questions?
Yes. When I was looking at the presentation and I saw the students right at the beginning listening and blending the sounds, putting them together, changing, was that all auditory or I couldn't see everything? I mean, did they have a visual to look at or were they
No,
working
that's
on
auditory.
their
That's
senses? That was great work
And I
auditorily, then that's difficult to do.
And it's purposeful. It's
Yeah.
purposeful auditory, really.
Okay.
Listening. It's a skill. And it's a practice. And I think a lot of what we see here is a lot of practice. These students are practicing and practicing and practicing, which makes for them to know and have the knowledge base they need to be fluent readers.
And then just to help with other people who were listening or might not be that familiar with movement like we saw in the video, what could you tell the benefit of the movement and what that does for the student, just to further enlighten people of what's going on?
And from my experience, too, in teaching reading, it's a philosophy that I haven't practiced very often. So this is, I feel, more new to DECUS, more new to our system, and it's very exciting. So the idea of strengthening the eyes, focus, it enables students to be able to really look at the words and be able to track the words so they gain eye muscle strength. And we can speak more to that too, Ms. Gibbs or Ms. Medeiros?
Mrs. Medeiros or Mrs. McQuaid had said they would be glad to speak about that part of it.
I think it helps a lot, especially when we're doing the movement activities. It's strengthening their core. It's giving them muscle strength. so that they can write a little longer. It's also, we do a lot of eye tracking. I think everything that we saw for the first grade, we also do in kindergarten. So we do that. There's a little bug on the screen, and it goes over here, and it goes over here, and they have to follow it with their eyes. So it helps the children, when it's time to read a book, go from left to right, follow the words. We do a lot of finger pointing and things like that. But the movement part, like the figure eights, that's crossing over your body. A lot of children, when they come from, when they don't go to preschool or they're not really have a lot of reading background, that's getting them to cross over their body and having them, again, when they're starting to read, they can go across the page. It's not just stopping in a certain point and then they don't know where to go next.
Because you go back and forth when you read.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I knew it was very important. That's why I thought a little extra explanation would let everyone understand what we were doing with all the movement at the beginning of the lessons.
I know, it was really a great instructional video, I thought,
Yeah.
that we can really utilize for
That's right.
practices at home.
And the other point I'd like to make or speak about is, I know that with this new programming, there's so many more advantages to it. And what's come out of what we're doing with these students from talking to Dr. Schwam is that we're actually getting real-time data and working with them in real time and not waiting for students to fail to give them intervention. Now, we're not talking special education. We're talking to all of the students, no matter. There is no term. There is no term like that going on. What we're doing is working with them in real time to give them what they need to go on and not wait for them to fail. And I feel that's very important too, and I applaud it, and I want people to understand that. And if you'd like to add more about that, please do it this time, because I think that's a great point.
Oh, we're just excited to be a part of this experience.
Well, it was great seeing it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very
Would
much.
anyone else like to speak? Mrs. Bakioki?
I don't have any questions. I just want to say thank you for coming and bringing the kids in. We've heard so many great things about the program. It was really great to see.
Oh, good, I'm
in
glad.
action, so thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you to the kids.
Sorry for our technological difficulties.
Thank you.
Thank you for bearing
Sure.
with us.
Mr. Swett has a question?
Just a quick question about these groupings. Are they dynamic? And by that I mean, do kids move in and out of these groups freely?
Absolutely, yes.
Good.
And we intend to even bring it cross-grade level,
Even better.
even better, yeah.
Okay.
Exactly.
Thank you for being here.
Yep,
Yes.
great presentation. And next, it's the Mass DECA District 8 Partnership with WCTV. Someone presenting?
Glad we got Christian out from behind the monitors. But we wanted to recognize WCTV and the partnership that's been created with the Wareham DECA program and the regional DECA program. WCTV has stepped up to the plate and is going to be donating not only their services, but a lot of technology for the regional competition coming up in a few weeks. And without their help, that cost would be passed on not only to our students, but to students in the region. And I'm going to let Christian kind of talk about the technology that they'll be providing, the services they'll be providing, but I just want to make sure I'm clear. It's a tremendous amount, and again, our students are benefiting from that, as our students in the region. So we want to thank WCTV, Steve Ruiz, and obviously Christian, so thank you.
Mrs. Maurice came to me and she said, did I know any cheap DJs who would be willing to work for about $1,000 for 2 nights? And I said, I didn't know anyone. And I said, what was it for? And she said, well, we have DECA districts and we need someone to run all the audiovisual for the 2 nights. And I said, that's going to be huge. And I went to Steve and I said, we're going to do it. And he was like, do what? And I said, we're taking over districts. And he said, wait, what are we doing? And I said, we're gonna do all the audiovisual for DECA districts in Falmouth in January. We're gonna do it all, but we're gonna do more. And he said, what else are we gonna do? And I said, we're gonna go live. we're going to go live to Wareham so that everyone in Wareham can watch their kids cross the stage. And he said, oh, okay, well, let's do it more. Let's stream it live so that all the other towns that have their kids who are crossing the stage can also watch. So that's what we're going to do. We're taking over all the audiovisual for the event. It's January 10th and 11th. It's going to be live to Wareham through the education channel. So that's Comcast 97, Verizon 28. We're also streaming live. We have a YouTube live channel right now. We'll be advertising the stream address when the time comes closer so that everyone knows they can just sign in and we'll be able to see both awards live. But not just to the awards, we've got a DJ on our board of directors, and he's going to take up the DJing for the dance for the kids the night after their tests. And we're also covering they're going to be doing a pep rally, school versus school, and we're going to be doing the games for them as that. We purchased 2 very large HD projectors. We also purchased 2 10 feet by 8 foot projector screens. We also purchased some more equipment to handle all the audio stuff. I think we've purchased probably around $7,000 of brand new equipment to run this. And we're gonna probably have around 7 staff on. 5 are returning seniors, alumni from Wareham High School. And then our normal staff are gonna be hands-on 24/7 for both days. And then as soon as the event's over, you have another event at Wareham High School the next day. That night with the... Not even the next day. It's the same day, on the 11th. I guess there's another event at the high school where we're going to... We're going to turn around and come and do that event also. So those 2 days are going to be very huge. But this is something that we want to do annually for this event because Wareham's kind of the lead of this part of the districts. So we're going to annually contribute this every year, streaming and live.
So thank you, WCTV.
Thank you very much.
Any questions?
Go ahead.
So your generosity and your initiative is greatly appreciated. Thank you. I have a question. Is Wareham's WCTV uniquely capable compared to other towns?
No.
That's interesting. You quickly answered that, didn't you?
A lot of other towns could do more.
So I thank you even more.
A lot of other towns don't have, we're unique to the way we approach our school systems. A lot of the other cable access stations, their education channel is a part of their school system and not a separate entity that works with them. So they may see the opportunity different than we see it.
Thank you.
Anyone else? I'd just like to say also thank you for what you do, and our DECA program is so great, so we'll be #1 for that and #1 for our community TV. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have the minutes of 3 past meetings to accept, to vote to accept. Can we do them all together, or do we do one at a time? Mrs. Ruiz, one at a time?
Whichever you...
I'd like to put them all together, and I'd like a motion to accept the minutes of November 15th, November 20th, and December 6th, 2017. Would someone make a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Oppose, abstain, 5-0-0. The next agenda item is the vote on the FY19 budget. And I'd like to have a motion. This was, oh, he is gonna share it, okay. Oh, okay. Mr. McMillan.
Good evening, school committee. We do have a few slides to run through that are very similar to what we presented at the public hearing. This vision, which we discussed before, and the budget request.
So the FY19 budget request for the net school spending, it will be $27,664,687. It's a change of $916,729 from last year. The non-net is $1,748,992, with a total budget of $29,413,679. What we'll do now is walk you through different pieces of the budget, answer any questions which you may have, and then we will be asking for a budget vote.
Thank you. So essentially, I'm going to show you, break down the budget and the steps that we went through to develop the budget. So we put together our first budget based on the requests we had from principals and what we knew about where we expected salaries to go and other costs. We then planned to make some reduction. There were some things which didn't even get into our preliminary budget, and I'm going to show you those in a minute, just so you're aware of what the process we've gone through. So we've developed we took out some things, we developed our first budget, we then planned to make subsequent reductions, and that's how we get to the budget we're proposing this evening. So the first part was how we got from the 2017-18 budget to the first draft of our budget. So we have salary increases of just under $1.4 million. That's just based on the staffing we have now, with a contractual cost of living increases and step increases. We are projecting an increase in our out-of-district tuition, and that is driven in part by an assumption we've made about just a cost increases, but also 75% of that increase is expected increase in the number of placements. We're also, and this is something we discussed at the public hearing, we use circuit breaker fund, which reimbursement we get back from the state in order to offset our out-of-district costs. And we project to have less available in FY19. So because there's less available to offset the costs, those costs have to be paid for by our operating budget. We're also seeing increases in our transportation costs, and that's in part due to the increase in the number of placements. So those students have to get to those placements, and so that will mean an increase in our transportation costs. We're also upgrading the security cameras on the buses, and we're also replacing the radios that we use in the buses in order to comply with federal regulations. The other item to highlight is an increase in daily rate for substitutes. So we are at the moment struggling to find substitutes. We offer around $67 a day for teachers to substitute, and that does not compete with the surrounding districts, and as a result we are not able to find substitutes. And this increase would allow us to increase that rate. And then the net effect of all other changes, the supplies and services, is just over $78,000. So that got us to almost $31 million. And then we are in the process of identifying savings of up to $1.3 million to our net school spending, and $200,000 to our non-net school spending. And that is, almost all of that is, well, all the saving is on transportation. And then, as I mentioned, there were some things that didn't even make it into the very first draft of our budget. So when in light of the difficult financial situation the town is in, we stripped out a lot of items at the very start. Capital request, we've reduced our custodial supplies, we reduced instructional supplies and technology. Some staffing requests, increasing staffing requests were taken out, and then some other changes to contracted services. And we had some projects to improve projectors and a couple of other things that we took out at the very start. So those are things that didn't even make it to the chopping block. And some of those have made it, and so some of those flow into our capital needs And we are going to the town administrator through the capital planning process to request these to be funded. So that happens out with the operating budget, so they would not be part of our budget, but we would hope to have them funded through the town's capital process, particularly their free cash. So that is upgrading or replacing instructional textbooks, materials and equipment, Chromebooks, ongoing repairs to our HVAC, some new vehicles for transportation, furniture, and those projectors I mentioned, and also upgrading security cameras. So I have broken this down by the major accounts. So this does make some assumptions about how we will make that $1.3 million in cuts. So this may change as we go through that process of identifying exactly where those cuts fall, and also where we're able to make other savings. Also, and I mentioned this before, and it adds a level of complexity that I regret, but we have made this change with the IDA grant, where we've moved what we use that for. Instead of using it for salaries and projects, we now use it primarily for out-of-district tuition. So it's $500,000, so it's just a big change in our costs. So that final column on the right shows the real increase or decrease after that change is applied. So you'll see there's changes across the board and each of those major accounts, but those changes might change as we go through the process of eliminating, of identifying reductions. I mean, obviously the really big change there is the payments to out-of-district schools. We're seeing a real increase of $647,000. And so next steps, I mean, aside, should I go? Aside from the vote this evening, the next steps for us are looking at transportation savings. And should I carry on with the slides? Sorry. So we're looking at savings we can make to transportation, and we're looking at a number of different areas, including routing. So if we can change to routes to reduce the number of routes we have in district. We're looking at, I mean, we are working hard to find other districts that we can share out-of-district transportation with. We're also looking at if we can use different vehicles to reduce the cost, or different models for delivering the transportation services. And that flows to regionalisation of services. Are there other districts, collaboratives we can work with on providing transportation, special education services? We're looking to work with the town. We have had some success there, because when we moved our transportation maintenance to the town facilities, that has been a good success and reduced some of our costs there. So we're seeing if we can replicate that in other areas, and working with the town on our capital needs, and obviously, working out the detail of where that $1.3 million reduction will fall. And the last thing is a project to increase the number of students we come here from overseas. So this is this slide, which I show you every time. But this basically, we're at this point, so we've gone through the initial presentation, the budget workshop, the public hearing, and now this is requesting your vote. After this, if we have a decision tonight, then the superintendent will notify the town administrator where we are, and then that begins the process. This is sort of the end of the beginning, and then we start the next part of the process, which is discussions with the town and preparing for town meeting. So this is the budget vote that we're requesting, as the superintendent outlined at the start.
So if there are questions, we would be happy to answer questions at this time.
Thank you. So how much do you think is being saved when we're using the 240 grant for tuition?
So it's between like $20,000, $30,000. So it's one of these things, I realize that's not a huge amount of money in the scale of things, but we are doing everything we can to save every dime. And once we get through this initial complexity, in future it will be a lot simpler. But it seems worth it.
Okay. And I know you've already explained it to me, but I think it's important to explain it to the public as well. Can you explain again why it is that out-of-district costs have gone up and circuit breaker has decreased?
So circuit breaker costs, out-of-district tuition costs have gone up because we expect to have more students attending out-of-district placements next year than we've had this year. That's the simple reason. Circuit breaker is money we receive from the state, so every year based on our out-of-district tuition, because those are students who go over a certain amount of cost per student. We send all that information off to the state, and then they reimburse that at a certain rate, which is determined each year. And that money comes to us and goes into a revolving account, and then we can then use that to offset future expenditure of out-of-district tuition. So one of the things that we did this year, or rather this year, the town set up a special education stabilisation fund, which the town paid for $200,000 in their free cash to go in, so that if there is a need for any, and the idea is that if there are any unforeseen increases to special education, we would be able to go back to that fund. So the availability of that fund meant that we had money that we could now use in our circuit breaker fund. So that's a one-off. It won't be available again, and so that was available this year, but it will not be available next year. And so that money that was available and is now not. But the costs haven't changed. We just have to find the money from somewhere else, and unfortunately that comes from our operating budget. So.
Okay, thank you. And then my last question is, can you please address what Michelle was talking about earlier at the public comment about equity between the schools?
Yeah, of course. So, the next stage of this process as we hone in on how we will make the reductions is going to be a difficult and detailed one, and equity will be part of the considerations we take into account, but we will be going through everything in a lot more detail, and at the moment we haven't made any final decisions. So, I think the presentation you alluded to was very interesting and instructive, and showed them as Mr. Sweat said, we appreciate that level of analysis and discussion. Those are the sort of things we'll be looking at, but we haven't made any final decisions yet, but we expect to do that over the next few months.
Okay, thank you.
I think before we take the vote, I'd just like to acknowledge the hard work that's gone into this budget and thank the people who were involved in it, starting with the superintendent, Mr. McMillan, and the superintendent's advisory committee from the school committee, Joyce Bacchiacchi and Jeff Sweat, and all the principals and directors who did their part in formulating the budget and let us knowing their needs, even though we couldn't grant all those needs, or really no new needs were granted. But it's going to be a tough few months ahead of us while we finish the work that we've started. So tonight's just the beginning of voting this budget, which is based on what we need to run our schools. And I just also found tonight the Policy Review Committee has updated the budget policy coincidentally this evening. So I was reading it again just before I came here. And this has been around for 25 years, and I just like to just go through the first few sentences so you understand what our philosophy is and what our accountability is. The annual budget is the financial expression of the educational program of the school department, and it mirrors the problems and difficulties that confront the school system. The budget, then, is more than just a financial instrument and requires an orderly and cooperative effort on the part of the school committee, the staff, and the community to ensure sound fiscal practices for achieving the educational goals and objectives of the Wareham Public Schools. A major portion of income for the operation of the public schools is derived from local property taxes, and the Wareham School Committee will attempt to protect the valid interests of the taxpayers. However, the first priority in the development of an annual budget will be the educational welfare of the children in our schools. Therefore, we have the budget that we are presenting this evening, and yes, would you like, before we vote, you'd like to say something too, of course.
First of all, in response to Mr. Flaherty's comments, and I'm only speaking for myself, and in part that's because I had the luxury of being on the Superintendent's Advisory Committee along with Mrs. Bakayaki. I have looked at this budget in greater detail perhaps than I've looked at any other budget. That's the first thing I would say. Second thing I will say is once you get past staff and fixed costs, the rest of the budget is so small that to start nickel and diming and micromanaging it wouldn't make any sense. And thirdly, and Mr. McMillan, would you put back the major account slide? The prerogatives of the school committee are to, whenever the numbers of the individual major accounts change, the superintendent and the business manager have to come back to the school committee to get approval for that. But within the individual major accounts, there is the freedom of the superintendent to move as she sees fit. So it doesn't really matter. The individual totals matter, but the individual line items within the totals are basically irrelevant to the school committee because they can change on a routine basis without our involvement, which candidly I think is appropriate. I mean, you have a CEO for a reason, and she's an educator, and most of us are not, certainly myself. So I have looked at this in great detail. And in fact, I've looked at it in a different way than I've looked at budgets. So to Mrs. LaFrancois's comments, by personal observation, when there's plenty of resources, no one complains about their share of the pie. When there's insufficient resources, everybody starts looking at their share of the pie and thinking it's unfair. Whether it's healthcare in this country or the school district of Wareham's budget, that's just the nature of people when they have responsibilities and don't have sufficient resources. I am both uncomfortable with the percentage of the resources that the high school gets, but I'm also uncomfortable with denying the high school the resources necessary to do what they are doing extremely well and what they need to do to compete. So it's a incredibly difficult situation, but I fully understand the fact that on the surface it looks like the high school is getting a disproportionate percentage of the budget. I can also tell you that as recently as this afternoon, we were reminded that high schools and even middle schools are looked at totally differently, even by the state, than the elementary schools. Simple example is we're trying to build a new elementary school. We can't put an auditorium in an elementary school because they won't pay for it. But we can certainly put one in a middle school or a high school because that's considered standard. So there's just a certain fact that is going to make disproportional spending depending on where the kind of students that are being taught. None of that makes it easy, but I will say that I have looked at this in detail, and this is probably the most difficult budget that I've experienced in a dozen years of being on the school committee. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak on the school? Point of order. Yes.
Let's see.
Hi, Mike Flaherty again. Thank you, Mr. Sweat, for your response. But it's not true that that she can, or the superintendent can, has free reign within those numbers, and you'll see it in the budget policy that you'll be looking at tonight. And we voted on that a while ago, that there are certain thresholds that need to be met, and if they cross them, then you have to do certain balance transfers within those budget lines. And you'll see it, it's 5%, I think, or $5,000. And we did that a while ago, back when I was on the school committee with you, because we'd get a budget at the year-end budget at the end of the year, and it'd be all out of whack and be like, this isn't what we agreed on, but it was what it was. And we didn't want to get, you know, surprised like that again in the future. So if you review the policy, I guess it's on coming up tonight, you can, excuse me, look at that. But that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
I can, yeah, I was just gonna, so it's not, so the transfer, so it's within function codes, which are like subcategories of major accounts. So it's not by account, we can make changes within account lines, just not at the function level, the sub-major account level.
Right, Mr. Flaherty is correct. There's 5% or $5,000 within the sub-accounts.
Yes.
Yes.
And then within each sub-account, there's account lines. And then. Okay.
Now, one other point I wanted to make. When you look at these major accounts, Mr. McMillan, am I correct that the 1.3 million in cuts, unspecified cuts, and the 200,000 in specified cuts, although I assume that would all come out of pupil services, correct?
Yeah.
All right, so my question really pertains to the 1.3 million. Do keep in mind that to the extent the cuts related to the 1.3 million change the numbers on the major accounts, you actually have to come back to the school committee.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And you know, in the last few years, we have come back to the school committee for at least one more vote before we've gone to town meeting.
I understand.
So
I understand.
Okay.
Yes.
All I wanted to say is that, like Jeff, as a member of the Budget Advisory Committee, you know, I did get to see the numbers before tonight, and there were difficult discussions already, and there'll be more difficult discussions, and like Michael said, and, you know, none of this came about easily. So that's all I wanted to say.
Anyone else? Again, thank you for your work. And for this vote on the budget, we actually take 3 votes, one for net spending, one for non-net, and one for the total. So, could I start with a motion to, the amounts on there.
I move a net school spending budget for 2018-19 of $27,664,687.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain?
I think I'm going to abstain. I just am really disheartened by the amount, that it's just pitiful. And then the other one is that, I know that things that supposedly we'll have discussions and things about the line items and all that, but I don't recall having much of it in the past, so I'm just going to abstain.
Okay. 401. May I have a motion for non-net school spending?
I move non-net school spending for 2018-19 of $1,748,992.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstain?
I move a total.
Is that?
Sorry.
What's the vote?
I was just saying, I don't think it's all in favor?
All right.
Yes, 500.
Sorry. I move therefore a total budget for 2018-19 for the Wareham School District of $29,413,679.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstain?
I'm going to abstain again from that.
401. Okay, Mr. McMillan, you can stay there because it's your report next.
Can I make a comment?
Oh, certainly.
To my colleague's comment, I both agree with you, but I am confounded by the fact that apparently the town is $600,000 short of meeting its own budget. And since we have been precluded by law from printing money, it would be nice if we could, but I don't believe there's anything that allows us to do that, that we actually have $1 million potentially that we have to further cut from this budget, depending on the actions of town meeting. So I'm sympathetic, but I didn't have any choice.
I just can't in good faith.
I understand.
Go for it, yeah.
Okay. Mr. McMillan.
All right. Good evening, school committee. So I have a few different reports this evening.
We do require some good news, please.
Sure.
Well, I'll start with school, the student activity accounts. I'm just going to do them on order that they're listed on the agenda, unless maybe we like a different way. So, the school student, this evening we present a list of the student activity accounts to school committee once a year to get your approval for their ongoing existence. So, for those of you who are not aware, the student activity accounts are essentially when we are the holders of student money. So if students want to, for example, really simple example is if they run a chess club and everybody has to be $5 to be a member of the chess club, then we hold the money, and if they want to spend it on something, they can. So really we're just the holders of this money. It's student money, and it can only be used for, it must be money that's raised for and used for students and not for expenses within the usual delivery of education. So it can't be used for any instructional materials or for teacher salaries or anything like this. This is purely for student activities. And so the way we manage that, and one of the ways we provide oversight, is we create different activities. So for like an art club or a badminton club will have its own activity account. And these are overseen. The primary responsibility for each of these is with the principal of the school. And they are managed at the high school and middle school. They have a specific person identified to oversee these. And then we have also set them up at the elementary school. And although there's of a very different order of magnitude, it just provides us with that oversight and ensures the money is being properly managed. So I'm requesting approval of these, and that approval includes closing one activity, which is the class of 2015, which is all used. Any questions?
Oh. I think I remember that these class accounts cannot keep can no longer keep a large amount of money in them after the students have graduated. Is that true?
So the idea is that this money should only be used for students. So that even includes, so if students have graduated, they are no longer students, so we can't spend the money on them. And what has been traditional here is what the class money is used for, often like the prom, the graduation costs, anything they do, activities related to that class. And if they have funds left and they choose to do so, they sometimes donate that money to the high school. So they may donate, like a table, or they may ask for a plaque, some improvements to the landscape, that kind of thing. And so that's why there's still some money there. But what we're trying to do is we're trying to make sure that once, within a reasonable number of years, that a activity is all spent and closed out, and we don't have residual funds sitting there or a fundraise or activities sitting open for long periods of time.
Okay.
A couple of questions. One is the amounts and the current balance. Are they as you would find on the balance sheets of the district?
So actually, as it happens, each of these activity accounts has its own bank account.
That's fine, but...
And each principal or the designated person in that school tracks their balances on a software, and every month they send reports to me of reconciling the accounts, reconciling the bank account to the software totals, so that, so if basically I get a report that shows You know, if there's $46,000 in here on the bank account, that reconciles with the software tracking the
So
bank.
there is a monthly reconciliation?
Yes.
Great. And I'm pleased to see that overall it's a relatively modest number,
Yeah.
given the number of accounts that we're talking about. Second question, can any one individual spend this money, or does it virtually always take two people, one to request it and another one to approve the request?
So it has to have two people, yeah.
It does have to have
Yep,
two people?
Yep. Well, no, actually, often it's three, but yes, at least two.
At least two?
Yep.
Okay. And then the largest outstanding balance is something called Student Activities Miscellaneous B.
Yep.
I just generically always wonder about miscellaneous accounts. What is that account, and why is it so miscellaneously labeled?
So that's a historic one where in the past funds from activities used to all be held in one account. They didn't break them out in so much detail. So that should be going down, and over time we will use miscellaneous type accounts much less often when it's a historic.
But why do we have two miscellaneous accounts? One with $52 and another one with $12,000.
They all way predate me. I'd like to just double check and I'll get back to you actually.
All right.
I can't remember why there's two, but
would
but
seem-
in theory, eventually that money will all be spent and we will not use it. We will not use those anymore.
I'm sure you'd love to consolidate them.
I'd let's just get
Whenever
rid of them
possible.
altogether. But yeah.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Do you need a motion?
So, a motion now. Now we're ready.
Okay. I'll make a motion to approve the student activities account based on the presentation this evening dated December 2017.
Second it.
All those in favor? Aye.
But just for the record, Mr. McMillan,
500.
is this as of a certain date, like November 30th?
Yeah, November 30th.
Let's make that motion as of November 30th, Michelle. Thank you.
Okay.
All right. Thank you very much. So the next report I have before you is a monthly expenditure report. So this report, so what this report does is show that it compares our expenditure by major account and the sub-accounts we mentioned earlier, compares that current expenditure to last year's expenditure, and as you'll see, there's a significant gap between where we are now versus where we were last year, and that the big difference for that is that we've done more purchase orders earlier this year. So we've created purchase orders which effectively encumbers funds for all our out-of-district tuition. And last year we added another over $750,000 in out-of-district tuition in December, which we are not doing this year because we have almost all the known tuition already encumbered this year. So that's a big reason for the change. There's still a gap. It's more comparable to where we were in 2016, which we know was a difficult year. And we've frozen the budget, which means we're restricting expenditure to minimize expenditure as we go through the rest of the year. Any questions?
We on this one?
Yes.
Yep. Jack.
So, yeah, every place I looked on this report, I got more concerned. So you're saying 750,000 of over $1 million, frankly.
Yep.
It can be explained by the fact that bills have been paid or encumbered that weren't at this time last year.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so we're still talking about roughly $300,000.
Yeah.
Okay, as long as we're, 300,000 still worries me a little.
Yep.
Less than $1.1 million. Let's take them one at a time. Student transportation, we're 10%, almost 10% difference between this year and last year. Help me feel comfortable with that 10% difference.
So there is also a slight we have encumbered more again this year, slightly. which is about 100,000 more that we've encumbered by this stage than we had last year
Specifically there.
in transportation, in addition to that 750,000 in tuition. But that's, I mean, that comes as some comfort, but I definitely think transportation,
That doesn't explain 10%.
no, part of it.
So you're concerned too?
I am, yes. We had set aside some of those circuit breaker funds for out-of-district transportation, which we will draw on if we have to.
Which means we'll have even less for next year.
Yeah, but that's part of what we planned
So,
in this budget.
so what you're saying is, we've planned a certain amount, even though it will reduce circuit breaker, it's a planned reduction.
Yeah.
But you're still
Just-
concerned.
You know, transportation the cost of transportation has accelerated in the last few years, and we are doing what we can to manage that, the impact of those increases. We're looking at opportunities to routing, working with other districts, anything we can to help reduce those costs. But it does keep me up at night.
Athletic services, much worse off this year than last year. And yet we had additional revenue from our outstanding football team this year, had more games, home games, et cetera. Why are we so far off?
So we have actually got, so part of what was approved at town meeting, the free cash, part of that is for athletic equipment replacement.
Okay, how much, do you remember? Sorry, I'm testing your memory, aren't I? I have no memory of that number.
Yeah, I can check.
That's all right. So it's, even if it's a modest number, it's gonna have a big impact on the percentage.
Exactly, yeah.
So you're not
Athletic
particularly worried about the athletic services?
Not particularly.
All right. It's pretty early in the year to be saying to the principals, stop spending. Have you done that already?
Yes.
Wow. Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair.
My question is, what are you worried about? Is there one account there that's a big worry, like we don't have money actually planned, put aside from someplace else that we might fall short?
I'm still worried about student transportation and out-of-district tuition, because those are the things that we struggle to control the most. So those are definitely the ones that keep me up at night, because those other areas the other areas that we don't have control of are things like heating, but the weather's cooperating so far. We also don't have control, to some extent, we have less control of substitutes because if people take time off, but thus far, touch wood if I had some, but I'd knock on wood, but thus far our substitute expenditure is down.
But the two that can incur 100,000 at a crack or something like that,
exactly.
are the transportation and out of district.
Yeah.
The two that
Those are
kind of always drive our budget.
Yes.
Those are the two.
Yeah, in the last couple of years they have.
Okay.
And that's really because that's just because they've increased. I mean, if you look at a chart of their expenditure for the last 10 years, you have this sort of, they just kind of bob along in the last student transportation particularly, then just in the last 3 or 4 years increases a lot. And light and out of district tuition increased a lot to, then leveled off, but as it seems to be increasing again.
Yeah. Two problem areas. Are there any other questions on the item?
It is, but it has to, so sort of a combination of this and your transfers. So should I just wait till you do the transfers, maybe? All right.
Okay, so.
So in an account like athletics, have you already made the purchases that would have been paid for with that?
Free cash, not yet. They're still out there, but it just means that we have less purchases planned from athletics.
Okay.
So whereas last year they were still going to do some purchases, this year we're not making those.
So you're not concerned that you've a little over 50% left?
Yeah.
And that we're only 1/3 of the way through?
Yeah, well, any extra purchases will be coming from free cash. So right now, we'll only be using it for salaries for officials.
Okay. And on page 3, under teachers and specialists, so the remaining amount is a lot less than it was. Does that have to do with the grant reassignment?
Yeah, so that's part of that. Is that, so it's, yeah, so it's just sort of 1 and a bit % less, but yes, part of that is that some of the money from the grant,
No, I'm sorry, the next line, so it's like a 40% difference.
teacher specialists.
Teachers and specialists, yeah.
Yeah, so that was a hire that was made later in the year, last year. So we just were spending. So you see, we'd hardly spent any by this point last year.
Right.
And teacher specialists, whereas we're just spending it this year.
Okay.
So I'm not.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, go ahead.
And so the transfers I'm requesting from this budget. So I will be glad to see the back of this change. So the first transfer, actually it's 5 transfers to move funds out of district tuition and into a number of different areas: classroom specialist teachers, school leaderships, guidance and adjustment, district-wide academic leadership, and non-clerical paraprofessionals. And that's because, so this is the areas where we've moved in that money to cover tuition, so that frees up the funds in tuition, and we can use that tuition to offset the things that we had previously planned to use the grant for. Does that make sense? I don't know, is that where your question was coming?
Yes, is it all right if I ask, or?
Of course.
Yes. Oh, please, go ahead.
Okay, I just need clarification. So I look at the tuition to the collaboratives, and we're in a deficit of $432,547. Is that correct?
Yep.
Okay, and then I look at the 766, or the private tuitions.
Yeah.
So we have $1 million or so there left.
Yep.
And we're going to take some of that.
Yep.
And transfer it so that it's paying, other things. So, and we're going to use the 240 grant to do the tuitions.
Yep.
But I'm just confused about, so we're in a deficit with the collaboratives.
Yep.
And the 240 grant is only like 500, right?
Yep.
So, and then you're going to be left with 63,000 in the 766 tuitions, is that right?
Yep. And 67,000 in the collaboratives. So once all this is said and done, so there's 2 things happening. One is the whole stuff about the 240 grant, but the other is that we essentially over budgeted the amount of money we'd need for private schools and under budgeted what we'd need for collaboratives. And that's why that's why you see the deficit. So essentially, if we put the 240 grant change to the side for the moment, you see a deficit because essentially, and this is a good thing, we've been able to put a lot more students into collaboratives, which tend to be cheaper than private schools. Yeah. So we had budgeted those we had budgeted a lot more students in private schools, and actually now, some of those students are now actually in collaboratives, or some of those students have left, and we've got some more students come in and gone into collaborative placements. So they were just moving the money from private, where we'd budgeted them, to collaboratives, where it turns out they actually are. So it's still out of district tuition, it's just who's providing that, whether it's a collaborative or a private vendor, a private school. So we do that 500,000, so we do the change of 500,000, which resolves the deficit. And actually, like you say, there's like $1 million left in that account. So
in what account? Because if we transfer...
Yeah, no, so then we do the transfer.
Yeah.
That's half of that $1 million. And then the other half is the other transfer to replace the 240 grant.
And again, you're still only left with 63,000 in the tuition to the private.
Yep. So that's because...
And have we already opened POs for...
That's the 750.
That's my 750. So that's why I have this part of why we have that big gap right now. So because we made that change, and so almost every tuition that we know about is already encumbered.
Okay.
So we have a little bit left. So I'm really hoping there's no more come in, and we're watching them all. I know. I know. Those are my worries.
Just saying.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. And then the one other, so there's the 240 grant-related transfers, there's the private schools to collaborative transfer, and there's just one more to transfer some custodial supply money to a maintenance of equipment.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions? I need a motion to approve the transfers. Do I have a motion?
I move we approve the transfers as outlined in the document prepared by the business manager dated December 11th of this year.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? 500.
All right, so the next report, let's see what track. So I actually have two more. So there's two more reports, which we were circulated. Only one's listed, but so we have a report on the active state and federal grants. So, I apologize because I think I've reported this 3 times and used 3 different formats because we've recently implemented a change to how we track federal grants and state grants. So the issue is that federal grants can often span 2 financial years, which creates a lot of complexity because it means that the same fund can be tracking 1 year and then tracking a different grant, and that means they just makes it very complicated. So what we've done is we've separated them out and so reported them separately. So you'll see under some of our grants we'll have a single year grant line, and that's basically when this can be, at the moment it's one of 2 things. It's either just a single year, like if you have a grant which is just within 1 financial year, and it's also a hangover from when we had, it's also historic, that's what we used in the past. But now when we start a grant, we can put it into an even year award or an odd year award, and that lets us alternate between those 2 funds as we track the grants. So for example, a grant that starts this year, which is actually FY 2018, will go into an even grant year award. So that by the time we come round to using that fund again, will be 2 years from now, and so that this year's grant will be all gone, and so it'll be much easier to track because we won't be using the same funds for different years' grants. And then because next year, when it's FY 2019, we'll use the odd year grants. I don't try to make this complicated. I do apologise. But this will make life easier, but and it's been requested by our auditors, so it's not just my fault. So.
You sent a separate email, I think, from Michael. Yeah.
Okay.
I have it.
This report came out late because we have been working on ironing out all these details. So there's a number of grants here. The most fall under the Office of Beyond School Time, and a lot of these are already in zeros because a lot of them are for summer programs and have been all spent. There are a few that have deficits where we have spent money and are waiting for reimbursement from the state or waiting for the payment from the state. Are there any questions? Have I sufficiently confused everybody?
Pretty much.
Is there anything? Is there anything that concerns you in this?
No. Nope. These are all.
Does anyone have any questions?
Yeah, it's pretty straightforward.
Is there anything we have to vote on for this?
No.
Nope.
This is just for entertainment. And then the next report was the revolving funds and private grants. This is a bit more straightforward, and this is similar to what you've seen in the past. This is money where we receive funds and then they are just used for a particular purpose, so they're called revolving because in theory the money is supposed to come in and then go back out as we spend it, and there are also private grants included here as well. There are a couple of areas that will have deficits, but I've provided explanation and I don't have any serious concerns. The biggest is food service, which is actually a federal government issue where we haven't received the September reimbursement yet, And then that's why we have a deficit there. We have received October, but not November. Any questions about any of those?
So when we see an ending balance for a circuit breaker of 635,000,
Yes.
based on what, and, well, I guess the first question I should ask is, you're anticipating a couple more payments this fiscal year, correct?
Yep.
Okay. So what you're saying by the budget presentation is, as of June 30th, well, I guess I don't know the answer to my own question here. The ending balance for this account as of June 30th is going to be over 200,000 less than the ending balance as of last June 30th.
Yes.
That's
Yes.
what
essentially,
you're
yeah.
saying.
And so this doesn't show you, which is maybe not very helpful, it doesn't show you purchase orders are not reflected here, so that we do have purchase orders.
Oh, I understand that. There are going to be ins and outs.
Yeah.
But the point is, as
Yes.
of June 30th,
It's going to be
there's going to be a lot less than there
Yes.
was last June 30th.
Yep, exactly.
Even though the percentage we're receiving from the state is pretty much the same,
No,
correct?
actually, the percentage went down
I've,
quite significantly.
whoa, whoa.
So the
Are
percentage.
we talking about the same percentage, this low 70s?
Yeah, it was 60. It was in the 60s this year. Now,
That's news,
so
because I had heard it was going to be essentially the same as last year.
So, yeah.
It
That's
didn't
what we
end
had.
up being the same.
No. Now, what lessened the impact in our budget is our claim was a lot higher than in previous years.
Wow, that's a mixed blessing.
Yeah. So with the percentage reimbursement we received,
How much did it drop? By what percent?
I want to, let me do, can you? Give me 2 minutes.
Because it
Sorry.
was low
Yeah.
70s the year before,
I,
and you're saying it's now mid-60s approximately?
it is. I'm sorry, just bear with me.
Is the percentage by district or is it statewide?
Statewide.
I've got it, where is it? So this year, the percentage was 65%.
Ouch.
Yeah.
That's a big number. Classic example of the state passing a law and then just saying, but subject to appropriation.
Yeah. So especially because last year was 73.1.
Oh, even higher than I thought. So it
Yeah.
was almost
80%.
mid-70s.
Yeah.
Okay. That's something.
I mean, I guess why you haven't heard is because, like I say, we had a number of factors in our favor in
Well,
the total.
but we also had costs corresponding to
Yes,
that. So it does,
exactly.
that's,
Yeah.
wow, that's about 8%. That's a big difference.
Yeah.
That's real money. Thank you.
I think that might be it. Is
I
that
think it is. Thank you very much.
Unless you just want me to hang around. All right, thank you very much.
I'm sorry, I have one more question.
Sure.
Sorry, Michael. Transportation, the ending balance of $29,474. Is that net of McKinney-Vento
That
money?
includes McKinney-Vento money.
That does include
Yeah.
McKinney-Vento.
McKinney-Vento has gone down.
I know it's gone down. I don't even want to get started on
I
that.
know.
That's an even worse example of the state doing its thing. And what do you expect that balance to be at the end of the year?
That transportation will be like zero by the end
Like
of the year.
zero?
Yes.
So there's going to be, obviously, essentially no monies for vehicles.
To purchase vehicles, no, that's going to our request to the town.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Our next agenda item, I'll turn over to the superintendent. Acceptance of gifts.
Yes, I have 4 gifts. The first one would be to accept $19,000 from the Gateway Restaurant. This was raised through 2 golf tournaments. This will be given to the Wareham High School Library. So I would ask for your approval.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Do we vote? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Abstain? Yeah, go ahead. 500.
Thank you. $20,000 from the Maurice and Ann Makepeace Family Foundation to the Wareham Public Schools. I would ask for your approval.
How many years in a row is this? It seems like every year.
For a long time.
That's just an outstanding commitment to this district. Many thanks. So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. 500.
Thank you. $150 from Noah B. Young of Onset to the Wareham Public Schools for music. I'd ask for approval.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
And finally, Davis Instruments Weather Station from Carol Breedberg of Wareham to the Wareham Middle School. I'd ask for approval.
I saw the box. It's a great weather station. I don't know how much it's worth, but it's not trivial. So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Okay, the next would be approval.
500, Michelle.
Approval of bills and payments. The first one, I have 10 payrolls. I can read them all.
That sounds boring.
Okay, so I would ask for approval of 10 payrolls. They've been published, and we would be happy to provide this information to anyone requesting.
Oh.
I'll make a motion, but just for the public's information, these are things that have already been approved and signed by the school committee members prior to this date.
Yes.
So I'll move approval of the payrolls and warrants as stipulated in the superintendent's newsletter.
Second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
500.
The next one, I have 5 bill warrants. Again, these have all been signed and approved and have been published in the newsletter. We would be happy to provide the totals for anyone of the public asking for them. So I would ask for approval of the 5 bill warrant.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. 500.
And I would just remind everyone that Friday is a half day of school, and we will be dismissed for the Christmas holiday. We will resume on January 2nd.
Do I have a motion? Oh,
No
no motion. Okay, that's right. We already motioned.
We're good
A
now.
long time ago.
We want you to come back on the 26th.
Okay, the next order of business is other school committee reports. Mrs. Bakioki?
Okay, so we had several policies that we reviewed. The first one is charging student meals. The change in that policy is in the last paragraph, where it says that negative balances will be considered bad debt, and bad debt will be written off. The second sentence in that, or the third sentence in that paragraph was deleted.
Are there any questions? Yes, Mr. Sweat?
So this effectively means that if a parent, well, Chris, everybody gets a free meal in Wareham, thank goodness. So these are basically bad debts generated by people who are buying 2 meals, right? I mean, that's really what we're talking about. Or theoretically, I suppose, staff, or does staff automatically pay at the time of consumption?
Well, there was a time when staff could charge, anyone could charge, and now we're not allowing charging because that's from the state when we had the audit.
Okay, so this bad debt would essentially be students who are getting 2 meals instead of 1. Is that a fair statement, basically?
2 meals, snacks,
Okay.
something like that.
So if they ignore our request for payment long enough, we simply write it off and that's that. Is that basically what this is saying?
Well, we cannot carry debt over. They can ignore it, but we have been very aggressive in going after it because it comes against the school district.
What's interesting to me is, and correct me if I'm wrong, but some students have told me at the high school that if they have debts, they can't graduate. They don't get their diploma unless they pay off their debts at the high school. Is that a true statement? That's what students have told me.
Well, I would have to investigate that exactly, because I do believe that we cannot withhold a diploma from a student if they've earned the credits to graduate.
And finally, do we have any idea the proximate amount? What is this balance currently in this? Michael's not wanting to answer that question. Maybe you could get back to me as to what the balances are. Thank you.
Well, what the balances are now, though.
Yeah, exactly, what they are now. Just how much money are we talking about? Given the fact that we've had free meals in all the schools all this year, and for, what, at least two of the schools last year, too? I can't
Right.
imagine the amounts are that large, but I just want to confirm that.
Do we have an amount where they're not allowed to charge anymore after a certain, if they owe a certain amount?
They used to. There used to be I think it was, maybe 2, 3, 4 lunches, and then there was a limit. That certainly puts everyone in a very difficult situation, because we certainly want our students to eat.
But this is a
healthy
second
meals.
meal. This
Right,
is,
but this was in the past.
oh, yeah, right.
But now they eat.
They
for
do
free.
eat.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
So we'd
Take
ask
a
for
vote.
approval with the
Approval.
changes.
Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
500.
The next policy is facility stewardship. There were no changes to that policy.
Do we have a motion to approve as presented?
So moved.
Second?
Second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
500.
The next policy is the controlled substances and alcohol use and testing. This is actually a town policy, and there were no changes to it.
If it's a town policy, we still vote to approve?
I'm not sure.
Yes. Yes? Okay. It doesn't say, it says the heading is Town of Wareham, and the
Yes,
rest
but-
have a different type of heading.
But we're a separate legal entity, and do we theoretically could modify this? Because if it's going to be a school committee policy, it has to be our policy. And
It probably follows state law in it, or
Well, it
federal
may
law,
be-
and it's exact.
It may very well, but I guess I'll ask the chair of the policy review committee, were we basically told this is it, approve it?
Well, I wasn't told that, but that is what I believe.
Because
We've had this since I was on the policy review committee for 20 years, this is the policy that we've followed.
Right, but it's not in our own policy manual, is that correct?
No, it is.
It is.
That's
Yeah.
why we accept it, so it's in our manual.
It's
Right.
in this format?
We also asked the town to review to see if there had been any changes. There had not.
As a legal matter, it probably needs to be formatted as a policy of the school committee, but whatever, okay.
Okay, do I have a motion to accept the controlled substance?
So moved.
Second?
Second it.
All those in favor? Aye,
Aye.
500.
The next policy is the reconsideration of instructional resources. So this is a policy that we talked about previously, but we went back and made a change and added the word education, educational in the section under ideologies.
Do we have a motion to approve?
First of all, I want to thank the committee for taking it back and reconsidering it. There's no such thing as whispering when the microphones are on, Madam Chair. And I appreciate the addition of the word educational, so thank you very much, and I'll move
That was a
approval.
good choice, wasn't it, when I saw it? I said,
I move approval. I appreciated it when I read it.
yes. Do we have a second?
Second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 500.
The next policy was the budget policy, and that was changed just to meet state regulations. The account listing had changed, and so now the policy matches up with the state regulations. And then we did make changes, so it read, instead of he, it read he, she, or him to him, her. Within the
Wait a minute.
policy.
I don't think I have the change. The change you made was,
The change is in the list of accounts. Under the budget policy?
yeah, budget policy, right.
Mhm.
Is it on page 1? I saw the changes in the list, but then I saw a change that should be made on page 1. Just above fiscal management goals, that paragraph, there's a sentence in there that isn't gender neutral. It says the superintendent will serve as budget officer and have overall responsibility for budget preparation, et cetera. And then it says, but he may delegate portions of this responsibility. I think it should end with
He deems, okay, so that
town
change
charter.
wasn't made.
Yeah, end with town charter, and anyone can say anything they want, but I found a way to take out the he's, end with town charter, and then say the superintendent may delegate portions of this responsibility to members of the staff as deemed appropriate. Change the tense of the verb, and you don't have to use he or she. Does that sound, and does anyone come up with anything?
My goodness,
Different.
I love it.
Okay. Just so it's gender neutral and it says the same thing? Or
Okay,
do you have,
sure.
you know, could you ask the committee, I don't know
Mhm.
if we make changes now, or if you want to bring it back
You
for
can-
that little.
You can do that.
Yeah,
as a school
That
committee.
does not need to
That's-
go back to the
Okay,
committee.
I didn't
Yeah,
think so.
okay.
I thought it would be simple, that's why I did it ahead of time. So, should I read it, or would you read it, Joyce, how it would be worded now? So
Well,
pe-
Would you read it the way you?
I would be happy to, I just didn't want to assert
No,
what you
that's
were doing.
fine, no, go right ahead.
The superintendent will serve as budget officer and have overall responsibility for budget preparation, including the construction of and adherence to a budget calendar conforming to the schedule set forth in the town charter, period. The superintendent may delegate portions of this responsibility to members of the staff as deemed appropriate. Okay. Is that
Okay,
fine?
yes.
Okay with everyone?
Did Michelle get that?
Are there any questions about the changes that are made?
Yes, and again, I thank Mr. Flaherty for correcting my memory, because I do recall the discussion which caused this specific phrase to be put in the policy. But my question is to the business manager. My recollection from all the transfers I've approved for a while is that this stipulation is in fact being honored. But would you confirm that when we move more than 5,000 or more than 5% of what is being referred to as a sub-account, that those transfers are being requested?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, we're ready to vote. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. 500.
And then the last policy is the payment procedures policy. And this one, the change that was made, instead of 3 members signing the warrant, that we would, as the payroll warrant, with the payroll warrant, there's an appointed member to sign. It would be the same for the bill warrant, that there would be an appointed member to sign the bill warrant.
Meaning the payroll.
No.
One for the payroll, one for the warrant.
I think that's what I was trying to communicate.
Oh.
So right now, we have a person and an alternate for the payroll,
Mhm.
and this would make it the same for the for the bills.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
So there would be a member and then an alternate member.
I'm confused, though. Mine has the current situation highlighted in yellow, not crossed out. Was it intended to be crossed out?
Yes.
Okay.
The one that reads 3 members of the school
Yes.
committee, yes, that was intended to be removed, I believe. And
Okay.
then,
The second one would be
yeah,
Right,
Yeah.
okay.
the one you're voting on.
And is this consistent with state law? Are we to assume that?
it is.
Because this has been a big deal for years.
So the recent Municipal Modernization Act, in section 58, said, inserted a change to chapter 41, section 56 of the Massachusetts General Law to the effect that for the purposes of this section, so that section is about warrants for payments of bills, and it now reads, for purposes of this section, the Board of Selectmen and any other board, committee, or head of department consisting of more than one member authorised to expend money, i.e., for example, school committee, may designate any one of its members to approve all bills, drafts, orders, and payrolls, provided, however, that member shall make available to the board, committee, or other department at the first meeting following such election a record of such events. So essentially similar to what we already have set up with payroll.
I have a problem with actually physically coming there and signing. And 2 years ago, it had to be at least 2 years ago, there was a policy that came in front of this committee for electronic signatures. And it wasn't accepted because the documents we had to sign weren't going to be provided to us, or every single document, or whatever. There were problems with the way it was presented and worded, and it went back to policy review. But I know I've been asking for 2 years, and I'm not the only one, why we don't have the ability to sign electronically. And I understand there were problems with paying for the software that would allow people to sign electronically, but I believe that's in a number of communities, that's the way these documents are signed. Because it involves coming to the school office, someone coming 2 days in a row to physically wait for someone to finish doing the work. You know, it isn't even the same time. It gets to be basically the same time. But then there are problem days where you're waiting around to sign a document and it takes up 2 days in a row. And you feel really bad when it's your responsibility and you're calling other people saying, I can't do it, I can't do it. I mean, it's like archaic. I don't understand.
So I can give you an update.
Sure.
By the way, archaic is like an epithet for Judy.
I know. Hey, so I checked with our town attorney, and he clarified the situation, which is that the payment, so he said that an electronic signature is acceptable, and that the payment procedure policy as it stands does not prohibit it. So
we can vote for this, and then will you get us some kind of electronic policy to come in front of the committee?
Well, so this is really up to the school committee, because technically this does not say, the policy does not say it has to be signed in person. So when it says school committee, an alternate member to sign the weekly bill warrant, it could be that can be signed, that sign can be electronic.
Can we add something in here saying that it can
You
be
don't,
electronic?
you're saying it, you don't even need to, so from now on, I can give you
we don't even
a...
need to put
In 2017, the word sign means
electronic.
either in person or
Yes.
electronically.
So, and I explained this could mean literally copying, copying and pasting your signature and sending it, and that will be sufficient.
So can that be done without software? I mean, is that a scanned signature, or will
I
it
believe
require the
so, but
software?
what I think, if you would like to go down that route, what I would do is make sure you have, Adobe, you can do signed,
Right.
dated
Uh-huh.
electronic signatures.
Mhm.
So I think that's the way I would go.
But if that
So
were the
this is procedural.
case, could you send the signature page, and could you also send the backup?
So
Not
that's
all
would
the
be-
invoices, but that.
Yes, the summary
Report-
page.
The
yes.
summary page.
Exactly.
Yes.
That would be my recommendation.
Well, it's usually like 14 or 15 pages.
Yep.
That's what
So
I'm
that
talking
could
about.
easily be sent by email and then and signed. And of course, we will have all the bills available in the office. So if
Right.
anyone wants to see the whole thing, or if you want to request an individual one, we can send that to you for
Mhm.
further examination.
That's fine.
Well, that's good news. Okay, do I have a motion to approve this
So moved.
policy? A second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
500. Thank you, Mrs. Bakioki.
You're welcome.
Okay. And then the next item, I am,
So if you want to implement this policy,
yeah, I want it, send it to me.
well, no, but if you want to implement the policy as written, we need to appoint, we already have.
Oh, we didn't appoint, you're right.
Okay, we have someone for the payroll, but we don't have a person and an alternate for the bills.
Okay, should we still keep it the chair and then an alternate, or?
Well, to your point about 2 days in a row, until we have the electronic version, it probably makes sense to not have it for the same person, because that'll prevent having to come 2 days in a row.
But can't we start the electronic version right away if we're voting this in? So it'd be,
Then we can keep it the same way, I don't care.
is there any more discussion on this? Does everybody understand what we're talking about? As it stands now, I'm supposed to sign both.
Yep.
Jeff is the alternate on the
Payroll.
and the warrants required more signatures before, so we were always looking for more school committee people to come in and sign it. Now it's just the one person and an alternate. So if we made them both the same, then
That would require
work.
a motion, though.
Yeah, require a motion, so. I don't know how the other one was worded. I mean, the motion that has the chair, because I don't see it, that it says, a minute.
I'll make a motion that the chair of the school committee be the primary signer of both the payroll as well as the bill warrant, and that the alternate be the vice chair. Not that I care.
I second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
500. And then I'm announcing that the release of the following executive session minutes. October 5th, 2016, January 4th, 2017, and May 24th, 2017. And finally, is there any other business not reasonably anticipated 48 hours before the meeting? Anyone? Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Hallelujah.
With
Thank
enthusiasm.
you.